I designed all of our experiences today on JamBoard. So part of the workshop is developing your experience in the tool. So please feel free to ask, like, how did you do that? Or I can't find what you're talking about. If you are one of the ones who's newish to it or just playing around. So I'm going to ask that we go into our first Jamboard. So it's the fraction talk. So you're going to open it up. And I'm going to keep my screen sharing what we're looking at, but in order to participate, you'll have to go pull up the Jamboard yourself as well. This is an example of a quick launch that I do with students. Probably do one of these like once a week, sometimes once every other week. Thanks, Chris. The words around this big Post-it, number bars, money, graph, word problem, decimals, equation, those were built out with my students and I. So as someone showed a fraction in a new way, we added that as one of the ways you could represent the number. So all of those words around the Post-it aren't actually provided by me. They're just, we added them as students figured out more and more ways that they could represent a fraction. So I'm going to ask us to actually do this. I want you to go into you're going to go into breakout rooms for 4 minutes, so not very long. And on your page, so there's a page for breakout room 1, breakout room 2, breakout room 3. On your page, I want you to try to represent the number 3/4 in as many ways as you can. Any questions about this assignment?
Erin, I've got the breakout room started. I just opened 3 breakout rooms.
Perfect. Thanks, Chris.
Awesome.
You're amazing.
That's why I'm here.
All right, so go ahead into your breakout rooms and you've got 4 minutes. So I just want to show you guys what you did. You could look through your own, like it's possible to check out what other teams are doing, but it's pretty awesome. This is breakout room 1. Breakout room 2. And breakout room 3. So even just looking at what you guys did, there's models that I would have added to our beginning page. So I don't have real life pictures up here that I saw on slide 2's page, or slide 3's page. The clock model I would add up here. So that's just so awesome. I also just want to show you. So this is the fraction talk that you just did. This is one from my students. This was early on in this routine, so students get better and better at showing what they're thinking about. This was designed by tables, so each table had a page, just like each breakout room had a page, and they starting to kind of show some different representations. This kid did this all the time. Just added like massive amounts of zeros. And it would be really fun to challenge him to say, well, can you say that number? And then started to bring in images, because there is this feature on the side where you can add an image. And as students started to see that, I don't want to do that right now. Their pages started to get more interesting. And this one had the 9 3/4 had just like, we had a really long talk about that. Like, does it represent 3/4, or are you just really excited about the connection to Harry Potter? is 9 3/4 the same as 3/4? And then I always put it the end on my Jamboards because I get tired of accidentally skipping past slides that are there that aren't there anymore. All right. How did this feel to you?
There were many more than I first thought.
So are you kind of saying like, are you learning from what some of the other breakout rooms did?
Oh yeah, even my own breakout room.
Yeah, and this happens with students too, right? Like one student brings in the images of quarters and all of a sudden students are like, oh yeah, you can think about fractions as money. Or the clock shows up and you're like, oh, I didn't put fractions on a clock before. So it really expands, they're learning from each other and it's a really fast routine. It doesn't have to take very long. Other takeaways?
I like the idea of having a group of people work on the Jamboard.
Why? I agree with you, Pauline. Why?
Well, last year, we were 50% of the school body in class at one time. And I ran classes where for 3/4 of our 75-minute periods, I teach at a high school, but for a special ed level math class. And for about 45 minutes, I'd have kids join in that were remote. And it was cumbersome to have each kid have a page and be able to look at each page.
Mm-hmm.
It was helpful. My classes are smaller than a mainstream class, but it was cumbersome to do that,
Mm-hmm.
but a little frustrating to fill up a page really quickly with a bunch of people working on it too. So, but I hadn't done much with the mixed group. So that's a new tool for me.
Awesome. All right, the next one we're going to do, this one's a little meatier. So the first 2 pages of this, we're going to do all together. No, I think we're going to do all of it all together. We're not going to do breakout rooms. So this Jamboard is called Fraction Pieces Play, and you're going to want to pull it up. It takes a little bit of time to load because there's a lot of manipulatives. There's images that are manipulatives on the Jamboard. So if it's taking you a bit of time to load, don't worry, that's normal. This is what it looks like. And I'm going to walk you through the structure of it. And well, actually, let's just go. So the first one is a visual warm up. And in the next part of our time, I'll show you where I get these images from, but I screenshot them from a website called Fraction Talk Images and bring them onto this page. So right now, I want everyone to think about that white triangle in the shape. And I want you to pull up a sticky on the Jamboard. So you'll pull up a sticky like this. And I want you to write what you think, what fraction of the shape is that white triangle. So what fraction of the large shape is that white triangle? When I do this with students, I tell them, don't press save. And I don't care if you guys do, because you won't feel any type of way about seeing someone else's answer. But for students, I don't want them to see someone else's thinking while they're still thinking about it. So I say, don't press save. So when I put my thinking there and I don't press save, it doesn't show up for anyone else. And then once I have a thumb up from all students, so they're like, my thinking's on my Post-it. I haven't clicked save, but my thinking's there. Then I say, okay, click save. And what happens then is a bunch of people's Post-its will all end up in this one spot, and I'll just kind of move them around so we can kind of see everyone's answers. That is a really good trick for not letting students kind of copy someone else's thinking because a Post-it went up sooner than they were finished. Someone who said that this is 1/4, are you willing to talk about how you saw it? How did you get to that 1/4?
So in my head, okay, so you have the white triangle on the left side, and then on the right, you have that square.
Mm-hmm.
And the lines of the square that are connected to that white triangle, but if you continued those lines, they'd come to the corners. And at that point, the square would be divided into quarters, and that white triangle is one of those quarters.
Did I draw the lines the way you were envisioning them?
Yes.
And then you said you saw 4 big triangles.
Yes.
Awesome. The person who had the 1/8 sticky, are you willing to share?
I thought you said the square.
That's
Sorry.
what I thought. No, because actually that is what I would do next with students. So can you just talk to us? I'm going to use your mistake to save some time. Can you talk to us about how you saw that square as 1/8?
I see how the former person drew the lines for the triangle. That's what I was picturing in my head, and thinking that if I divided the square vertically, there would be 4 of them, and 2 of them are half of that triangle, which means that since there are 4 triangles in the whole, the triangles being a 4th, that 2 of the half of the triangle would be an 1/8.
Awesome. And what I would have done if this were students is we would have taken our stickies off, and either the next day or that same day, okay, so can we figure out what fraction of the shape is the square? So I'm saving time by just using your mistake. Thank you for sharing your thinking.
Erin, may I ask a question?
Please, definitely.
When you do like a visual warm up, about how long of a routine is that?
I try to keep it to 5 minutes.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
I want you to click to slide 2 on the Jamboard. So this is a different kind of warm up, and I typically don't do both warm ups the same day. So one day I might do a visual warm up, the next day I might do a number line warm up. Often I have tables of students assigned to a color, or if it's a small group, individual students assigned to a color. So that's why I have all the sticky post-it up. I want to show you what this routine looks like. So I need 5 volunteers to try to place their stickies on the number line below. And you are not allowed to move someone else's color. So you are only allowed to move your color. All right, go ahead and try to put them on. And I'll just kind of show with you what we do with students after they're on the number line. It's much more impressive to watch adults do this.
Oops.
I have another question. I've never seen Jamboard before.
Yeah.
And so is it something that's easy for kids to access on like Chromebooks?
Yeah, because it's a part of the Google Suite.
Okay, is it something that has to be added, or do they just go to a website?
No, so it's in your little waffle of Google items.
Yeah.
I call it the waffle, that 3x3.
Yeah.
Jamboard doesn't always show up as one of the ones, so you kind of sometimes have to say more, like I want
Right.
more options. But Jamboard is just a part of Google, so it works really great with Chromebooks. Works really great with Google Classroom.
Great, thank you.
It's embedded in the options with Google Meet, or at least it was last year.
Yeah, it's also embedded inside of Google Meet. You're right. I forgot about that. So after students put all the numbers on the number line, I ask students to take it in. Okay, so now just look at the number line, and this won't happen with adults, but I ask students to say, is there a sticky note that you have a question about? What I'm really asking them to do is think, is there one that's out of order? But I don't want them to just say one of them is out of order. I want them to ask a question like, why did you decide to put 1 5/10 with 3 halves? Like, why did we decide to do that? What's awesome about posing it as a question is you can, as a teacher, pose questions as well that help students. So can someone prove to me that 1 5/10 does belong on the number line with 3 halves? Because I don't see the connection, right? So I'm now showing students that how to ask questions, and I'm asking questions that I want all the students to hear the answer to. So it's really awesome. You can ask questions about Post-its that are placed in the right spot and Post-its that are not placed in the right spot. Students will typically only ask questions about ones placed in the wrong spot, and they have a really hard time forming the question. So it's really helpful. It's a really helpful process. They just want to say 1/4 is not the same as 25/100. You can't put it there, right? That's not true, but an example. So that's one thing. Once students get really good at this, we also talk about spacing. So how do we feel about the spacing? Does it really look like 1/2 is halfway between 0 and 1, or do we need to space that better? So there's a magnitude lesson that comes along with this number line. Again, I'm trying to not spend more than 10 minutes on this. So sometimes we leave stickies in the wrong spot. That happens sometimes. Any questions about this?
Quick question.
Yeah.
Do you have students purposefully go back to old Jamboards or to review something or independently?
Sometimes I keep records of old Jamboards that keep our student work. And sometimes like this fraction pieces play one, I didn't want to have a ton of them saved. So I actually reset this one every day. So if we did this number line activity, it would be reset on the same Jamboard the next time I did it. And sometimes like I do save some Jamboards to show student work, like the fraction talk one I showed you. And I show the fraction talk ones to show, wow, look at how much better we're getting at this. But I don't do it with all of them. Sometimes I keep the template and just reset it each day.
So how do you quickly reset it without losing the number line in your?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things. When multiple people have done it, you can say, let's reset this page before we move on. So everyone who was a part of moving the stickies on the number line, can you use this undo button and just hit undo until all your stickies go back up to the top? The really important part about this is you have to do it before you close out a Jamboard. So if you close out a Jamboard and you didn't reset, you have to manually drag all the stickies back up.
I keep trying to do it on the video. Sorry.
Yeah. And the other thing is you can only undo your own actions. So I can't do undo as a quick way of doing this because I didn't move any of the stickies. But if I remember to ask students, then it will save me some time. I don't have any time savers for resetting all the stickies. You just have to pull them up and write something new in them. I don't have a way to make that faster.
Erin, I apologize if you already said this, but did you talk about duplicating a slide so that at least you have the original slide?
That's a really good point. Yeah, so down here in this expand frame bar, you can duplicate any slide you want. So in this Jamboard, I have these slides that have a ton of fraction pieces on them. I did not input the images onto each slide. I just made one slide and then I duplicated it as many times as I needed it for. So that duplicating is helpful if you are going to change the slide, but you want to come back to the original slide later. So for time, we're not going to actually go through this one. I'm just going to kind of talk about it. After we had done a warm up, I would often have a problem of the day. And this is these are designed for students who are really struggling to kind of imagine fractions, and we're not in common denominator world yet. They can't see that. So the estimates box, I would ask students a question related to a benchmark number. So I might say, do you think that this problem is going to be bigger or smaller than 1? Like, are we going to make a whole or more with this, or not? Or is this problem going to be more or less than a half? And that's what would go in their estimate. So a lot of students, if I said, is this going to be more or less than a half? They'd pull up a sticky, write M for more, save it, and that would be their estimate. I just think it's going to be more than a half, right? And we would talk about what makes you think that as part of the routine. Then they would go, depending if this was individual work or teamwork, because I've done both, they would go to their slide. And a lot of the students would write the problem on their own slide. So they'd write 2/3 plus 1/4 and kind of put it there. And I embedded these images of fraction bars so that students, they had to, on their slide, somehow show what is 2/3 plus 1/4. So students might start with 2 of the third pieces and 1 of the fourth pieces and put it all together. I was totally okay with students just showing their work through numbers too. Not every student would use these pieces, but they had to show something. And then when they were done, when they had something on their slide that they showed, and I gave multiple versions of these, you can add more by just duplicating. When they were done, they had to come back and put a sticky in for their solution. Say they came to 6/10. And their solutions, I would just hide behind the solutions box. So like students would be working and they'd say, okay, I've got a solution, and they'd go to the solution page. And then this by saying bring order to the front, bring to the front, I'm able to hide all the stickies behind it. Again, I just don't want kids to copy each other. I want them to actually show. Once I have a solution for each student or each team of students behind this box, then we go into the share portion. We look at each page and ask students to talk about their thinking. And then they see the multiple ways that they represented that problem. That's the end of that routine. Any questions? All right. In the agenda, there is 3 resources. These 3 resources I tend to go to a lot when I'm thinking about fraction stuff with students. So first, the Kentucky Center for Mathematics, they put out a ton of virtual resources. I don't know if it was around the time of the pandemic, that's when I found them. And maybe they had these resources before. So they have a ton of resources, and some of my inspiration for fraction JamBoards actually came from them. They have an entire section on fractions, and they have a mixture of Google Slides and JamBoard. So as my students were getting really good at JamBoard, I found like we tried this fraction area puzzles one day and they loved it. There was a ton of rods and strips ones that I haven't tried with students, but some of what I learned is possible inside of JamBoard came from exploring stuff on this website. Fraction Talks, this is where I got that visual image. And there are so many of them. And some of them are really tricky. But I pulled one of these probably 2 or 3 times a week. And same but different, another number sense routine that has a whole chunk related to fractions and ratios. And so this is another place to build in like a visual image warm up. So to close out, we're going to go into the final Jamboard. So this is Jamboard tips. Because running a Jamboard in the classroom has some considerations that are helpful. So those of you who have tried it and those of you who haven't and have just seen it happen right now, there's two things. I want us to populate this Jamboard with the answers to two different questions. What are helpful tips when teaching students how to use Jamboard? So there's an instruction that needs to happen for them to be able to use this tool. So what are some tips there? And on the second slide, what are some tricks to help students not get distracted by the features in Jamboard? So I'm going to give us 4 minutes to kind of populate this Jamboard with some of our own experiences, or just even from experiencing it tonight, what are you thinking about in terms of helping students learn how to use it and helping students not get distracted by its features? All right, helpful tips. Make sure make each student their own slide and or make a copy of the original slide. Nice. Start with a Jamboard to test out the features. Teach certain features during specific lessons. Use a few features at a time. Show them how to use the eraser instead of the clear frame. Yeah, that's actually a really, really good point. If I said clear frame right now, everything on the frame would disappear. So you have to teach them about the undo and the eraser as the way to undo what they've done. That's a really, really big point. Be willing to help with some of the logistics, writing a number, erasing. It will speed things up without reducing student agency. Nice. Specify when to use a text box to make number writing neater, more efficient. Yeah, writing with the actual writing tool is challenging. I spend a lot of growth mindset lessons on it. Like, look at how much better my writing's getting. It is really hard. Specify which tools are on and off limits. Totally. Make the first Jamboard an intro lesson on Jamboard. Absolutely. Have iPads when iPads have S. What is this? What does this one mean? I don't understand.
When on iPads have students close other apps because it will be glitchy and freeze.
Oh, yep. Yeah,
That
especially.
actually, sorry, Erin.
No, go ahead.
That's true of Chromebooks also. Like often they get over like too many tabs. Closing other tabs will help.
Yep. And with like the Jamboard, like the fraction pieces Jamboard, that will be a problem because it's loading so many images. Yeah, that's a really good one. Allow them to play, totally. Praise student patience, absolutely, especially with the writing tool. Show them how to make stickies and going around before. Yeah, and a really cool sticky note thing that I discovered, actually a student taught me, is the transparent form. And so if I put a number on the transparent sticky, it just looks like a number. All right, next slide. Address the pointer feature and be clear when it's allowed and not allowed. That is the most distracting feature, particularly because as long as I'm using the pointer right now, but you won't see it on your own Jamboard until I let go. And then all that squiggling will show up on your screens. It's so distracting. So that's when I remove students' editing rights if I find them using the laser to distract people. Don't resize or move anyone else's stickies. Wait to open their Jamboards. Yeah, I always show them the Jamboard before I allow them to access it and have them turn on. I have them close their Chromebooks or take their editing rights away when we're discussing, so they actually can't use the tools when we're in a discussion. Give them time to play, time to play and explore. Totally. I think that's time. So I guess I'm going to open up to questions, comments, and Before you do leave, actually would love to hear what is your next step in JamBoard. So we'll go a little bit longer. First, questions or comments?
I just want to say that we have, I'm the instructional coach at our school, and I work with teachers K-8, but specifically our 7th and 8th grade teachers have been really discouraged about kids being totally intimidated by fractions.
Yeah.
And a lot of it has to do with the timing of when we left school in their 5th grade year, our 7th graders, and just, so I'm so excited to see this tool because it looks like a really engaging way to get kids to start thinking about fractions and not freak out every time they see one. So I'm really excited about this. Thanks.
Oh, good. I'm so happy to hear that.
I'm really excited about using these. I besides teaching math classes where fraction is going to be a good portion of what I'm working on with my 9th graders. These are kids that are below grade level. They're on IEPs. They're not life skills kids, so they're kind of the in-between level, but the JamBoard will allow me to see a lot of stuff quickly in class because we're still trying to keep some distancing, but also give them something they can access at home and refer to. And also, I hadn't thought of doing this, but even sitting side by side with students in the Student Support Center when I do direct instruction one-on-one, to have them respond, and the two of us can be working on something the same that again we can pull back up.
Yeah, Pauline, you said a couple of things that made me think, like older students, honestly, I felt like they liked being in this JamBoard because the fraction pieces themselves are cumbersome, and if you see other colleagues or other peers not using them, you're kind of like, I don't want this big pile of pieces in front of me that other kids aren't having to move around. On the JamBoard, you can't tell, because you're in your own pages, you can't tell which students are going to represent that all in equations and which are actually going to show with variations of those models. So it allows students to use the one that makes sense to them. And to Lori's point, many students are not making sense of fractions and need something concrete and visual in front of them so that it starts to make sense. So yeah, I think I would even extend it to students in their regular math classrooms. Hey, if you need to play with your fraction pieces, pull up that JamBoard and just play with them while you're trying to do that work. It's a way to almost hide the manipulatives for students who don't want to be seen with them.
I'm glad you brought that up because I just started working with, made a schedule change so that I'm now working with a student who is frantically phobic about being identified as special ed. He's in a mainstream algebra class and he is willing to come work with me at a time when all the students are changing around. He does not want to be pulled out of his study hall. So this, thank you for commenting because that gives me, okay, this might be something really easier. I pulled out manipulatives to represent algebraic, a simple algebraic equation, just to introduce that to him. And he was fine like till the end, till I said, and I could even use it on this really complicated equation. And then he was like, oh no, that's too much work. So I wasn't asking him to do it. I wanted him to see the power.
Yeah.
And the connection would be there, the manipulatives, but maybe we can do the same thing with something where he and I can both work on the JamBoard. So thank you.
Totally. Yeah. How are people, and yeah, if you need to go, that's totally fine. We're going to wrap up in 10 minutes and no matter what, we'll be done a little bit early. I'm wondering, what are people's next steps going to be? Like where are you going to go from here?
So I'm supporting a variety of middle school students who just need a little boost with fractions. And I'm new as a math interventionist, so a lot of this is all new territory for me. And I have found the fraction strips, and I was so excited about them because they're concrete, but just moving them around is more trouble. And that I have this digital version, it's very exciting. I'm actually going to pull one out tomorrow. Pull this slide out tomorrow to work with some 7th graders in a small group and introduce it and see like what they think about it, because what they're struggling with primarily is partitioning and equivalence. And this is perfect for that.
So I'm about to start my fraction unit in 4th grade next week, and I start with to me the best tool that I found over the years is just really paper folding. But I'm very excited about the number lines and the density of number. They really have a hard time seeing numbers in between numbers and inside numbers. And so I can, in the past, I used to use this SmartBoard technology, which is a dinosaur right now, but this seems to be the next thing to do. However, I haven't used this. I need to learn how to use it first.
Yeah, and if you
But I
have
see
any
a lot of potential.
questions, if you have any questions, feel free to email me.
Awesome. Yeah, but I see a lot of potential with this. Just the idea of differentiating some students, just giving those easy fractions to put on the number line that is 0 to 1, but others I know they can go from -1 to 2.5 and put some numbers in there. So it's like it allows me to do all kinds of things, you know.
That makes me happy. And thanks for sharing, Jaron.
I'm embarrassed that I've never really thought to use fractions as part of my math warm-up. So I'm definitely going to be using fractions in my math warm-up starting very soon. So so thank you, because yes, I was like, why have I never thought of this? But I hadn't. So I will.
Thanks, Joan. That makes me really happy.
And thank you for sharing your story today.
Thank you for saying that.
Have a good night.
I'm thinking about using JamBoard to do some fraction review with a group of 5th graders who I was talking to you about this yesterday, Erin.
Yeah.
But I'm remembering now that one of my kiddos who's very artistic and also has decided that he is bad at math. No, not that he's bad at math. He doesn't like math. He doesn't like it. But we were able to he had drawn a picture that was like these strips of color that happened to be 6 equal strips of color. And so we were able to get into fractions that way. And so I'm thinking about pulling out the JamBoard as a way for him to kind of share that. And then also hopefully help him teach his classmates about some of those other ways that he's been visualizing fractions.
That's awesome. That's really exciting that you're leveraging his strength to bring him in more.
I'm an instructional coach, and I am working with a special educator actually who is working with some 6th graders who have had, I think part of the reason they're struggling with fractions is just lack of exposure in the past couple of years, especially at 4th grade. And they also have some other challenges around math anyway, but I love the idea of the fraction talk and bringing in those real world pictures, because I find it's making the math relevant for them. You have to find those hooks. And so I was like, oh, I didn't think about that. So that was a real, as a takeaway for me as well. So I was like, yeah, I have to relate it to something that they're going to buy into and find the value in. So that was helpful. So thank you.
That fraction talk, I was surprised at how well received that routine was for students. And I think I shouldn't have been surprised. It's so low floor that anyone can enter that routine, and that makes it really valuable.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So thank you. I was like, yeah, that's what we need. Something that's going to be they can connect to.
Yeah, you're awesome.
Especially at 6th grade, because we were building a foundation from like 3rd, 4th grade up to where they currently are. So even just naming a fraction has been challenging.
Yep. I'll end with this story. So I literally today after school, my 5th grade teacher came up to me and was like, I need to ask you something about fractions. And I said, okay, sure. I have like a few minutes. I was like getting ready for this to start. And she was like, when we're adding mixed numbers in the unit that we're in, and at first it was just common denominators, and now it's not, and I've lost more than half of my class. And I was like, yeah, that doesn't surprise me, right? And she said, I was trying to show them about common denominator, and this is a first year teacher. She